my favorite Chinese movie actor then was Bruce Lee. I particularly enjoyed watching one of his movies called The Big Boss. For me, growing up in Nigeria, all that I learned about the Chinese people came from Hollywood because I never met a Chinese person on the street to chat with that person. So if you ask anybody in my generation who grew up in my neighborhood in Nigeria, they'll probably tell you that, well, all I learned about the Chinese culture came from Hollywood. Secondly, I really don't know anything about the Chinese. I don't know much. And third, they will tell you that, oh my God, Africa has no relations whatsoever with the People's Republic of China. But that story has changed today as a result of two political and economic developments in the world. The first has to do with the role of China today. This report came out in the New York Times yesterday, and it says that China now has the second largest economy in the whole world. And it is estimated that in the year 2023, it's going to take over from the United States. Don't get scared though. The second development has to do with China's increased political and economic engagements with the people of Africa since 2001. So therefore today, I don't need anybody to tell me about the Chinese people because I see them on the streets of Africa. I don't need any Hollywood to tell me about Chinese people. And I will tell you by showing you some examples. The first picture depicts the image of a woman in Nigeria who is very popular now. She has the biggest or the largest restaurant in Lagos. That guy that you see there owns one of the largest manufacturing companies in Lagos. So if you go to Lagos today, and you happen to be the type that likes to go to a nightclub, you see young Chinese, good-looking guys eating, dining, whining, and if you're lucky, one might even ask you to dance with him. Mr. Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, and a welcome guest, what is my purpose today? My purpose is to tell you about China's increased engagement with Africa. What is the motivation? What is the drive? But before I talk about this, I'd like you to keep the following points in mind. Number one, China is now recognized as the most aggressive investor in Africa. Secondly, China's economic relations with Africa is now a topic of serious analysis and debate in the international system. Also, a third point, which I derived from a book titled China's New Role in Africa. The author states that China's relation with Africa is probably the most important development in that region since the end of the Cold War. To the extent that analysts are now saying that we can now refer to Africa as Chin Africa. So what are these motivations? The first has to do with Africa's economic resources. By next year, according to the Financial Times, China will be the #1 energy consumer in the whole world. China will have to rely on countries such as Angola, Sudan, Nigeria for oil, Zambia for copper, and let's say Zimbabwe for timber. So now, China is really investing in Africa because it knows that continent has a lot of resources. The second point has to do with reaching the African consumer. African nations, let's say we have about 53 African nations in that continent, and we have about 800 million people living there. So what China is doing is, let's move on to that continent and reach the last consumer. And there is this popular saying that China sees Africa as a dumping ground for its counterfeit products. Actually, most of the clothes that I bought when I was in Nigeria was made in China. I'm sure if I check yours, it's probably made in China too. So, leaving aside economic reasons, what about political calculations? Policy analysts in the Western world, let's say Canada or America, are saying that China is trying as much as possible to reduce America's hegemonic influence in Africa. Also, there are people who are saying that, look, China needs the African votes at the UN General Assembly. Let us remember that if not for African countries, China wouldn't even have made it to the United Nations Security Council. The second point is that there is this kind of competition going on between Taiwan and China. So China is trying as much as possible to reduce Taiwan's diplomatic influence in Africa and in the international system. I told you earlier about a movie that I like to watch called The Big Boss. Now, when I remember that movie, I don't think about Bruce Lee, but this is the image that comes to my mind. Mr. Toastmaster.
It sucked.